The massive crystal dome of Nexus Station gleamed against the backdrop of 3 purple suns. Inside the Great Hall, beings from across the galaxy gathered in rows that stretched upward like a glittering mountain. Each species had their own section, their own breathing apparatus, their own gravity field. The Etherians floated in shimmering clouds of light. The rock-like granite folk sat heavy and still. The insect hive queens clicked and buzzed in perfect harmony. At the center of it all stood the speaking platform, where Council Speaker Velthar raised her 6 arms for silence. Her body was made of pure energy, shifting between blue and silver like captured starlight. When she spoke, her voice reached every mind in the hall through the universal translators. "Fellow beings of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice carrying the weight of authority built over 10,000 years of peace. "We face a crisis unlike any in our recorded history." The hall fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems keeping hundreds of different species alive in one space. Even the always chattering squeakers from the outer rim stopped their constant noise. "The humans," Velthar continued, and the word seemed to hang in the air like a curse. "These creatures have been expanding across the galaxy for barely 50 of their years, yet they have already broken every law of civilized space." A hologram appeared above the platform, showing a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked human colonies, and there were far too many of them. But that was not what made the assembled beings gasp and recoil. It was where the red dots were located. "They have built cities on worlds that should kill them," Velthar said, her energy form flickering with what the translators identified as disgust. "Planets with gravity that would crush our bones, atmospheres that would burn our lungs, radiation levels that would cook us from the inside." The delicate ones, who lived in carefully controlled environments, began to shake with fear. The gentle giants, who needed perfect temperature and pressure, made sounds of horror. "Look at this," Velthar said, pointing to one red dot. "They built a mining station inside a gas giant. The pressure there would flatten our strongest ships. The storms would tear apart our best technology. Yet they live there. They work there. They call it home," another dot lit up. "Here they have farms on a world where the ground shakes constantly. The soil is poison. The rain is acid. Our scientists say nothing should be able to grow there. But the humans grow food there. They feed millions." One by one, she showed more impossible colonies. A research station built on a moon where the temperature changes by 300 degrees every few hours. A city floating in the upper atmosphere of a world where the air itself catches fire. A mining operation on an asteroid so close to a dying star that the radiation should have killed everything for light years around. "This is madness," called out Hierarch Zexton of the Peaceful Alliance. His people lived in harmony with nature, never taking more than they needed, never changing what already existed. No intelligent species builds homes in places that try to kill them. "Agreed," rumbled High Chief Morgak of the Stone Clans. His people carved their cities from the most stable rocks they could find, deep underground where nothing could threaten them. "These humans are either insane or lying. No one lives on Deathworlds." But General Kethvar of the Zephyrian military caste said nothing. He sat in the war leader section, his forearms crossed, his scaled face thoughtful. His amber eyes, which had seen 17 different galactic wars, watched the display with an expression the translators could not identify. "The humans claim they come in peace," Velthar continued. "But how can we trust beings who live in places where peace cannot exist? How can we make treaties with creatures who build their homes in hell?" The harmony singers began a low, worried song. The crystal minds chimed in distress. Even the ancient tree speakers, who rarely spoke at all, rustled their leaves in concern. "I call for immediate action," Velthar declared. "These humans must be stopped before they spread their madness further. Before they teach other species that it is acceptable to destroy worlds instead of nurturing them." "War," said Hierarch Zexton, though the word seemed to pain him. His people had not fought a war in 3,000 years. "We must vote for war." "Agreed," said High Chief Morgak. "If we do not act now, they will turn the whole galaxy into Deathworlds." The vote began. Species after species raised their various appendages, showed their colors, sang their agreement, or clicked their consent. The humans would be given one chance to return to their home system. If they refused, the full might of the Galactic Council would drive them back. The tally grew. 200 species voted for war. 300. 400. Then General Kethvar stood up. The hall fell silent. The Zephyrian military caste had never voted against a war. They were the Council's sword, the beings who carried out the decisions others made. For their most decorated general to stand now at this moment was unprecedented. "General Kethvar," Velthar said, her energy form flickering with surprise. "The military caste votes last, as is tradition. We have not yet called for your decision." "I know the traditions, Speaker," Kethvar replied. His voice was deep and rough like grinding stone. "But I request permission to address the council before the final vote." "On what grounds?" Kethavar's amber eyes swept across the assembled beings. Warriors, philosophers, scientists, artists, the greatest minds in the galaxy, all of them ready to go to war against an enemy they had never truly met. "On the grounds that I have met them," he said simply. The hall erupted. Beings who rarely spoke shouted questions. Species that never showed emotion displayed shock and fear. The Etherians flickered so rapidly they looked like strobe lights. "Impossible," Velthar said. "Contact with humans is forbidden. The Council has not authorized any meetings." "The Council did not authorize it," Kethvar agreed. "But 3 years ago my fleet encountered human ships near the border of Zephyrian space. We met, we talked, we learned." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Before you vote to send 1,000,000 ships against an enemy you do not understand," he continued, "let me tell you what I discovered about these humans. Let me tell you why I believe this war would be the greatest mistake in galactic history." Velthar's form had gone completely silver, a sign of deep uncertainty among her people. Around the hall beings shifted and whispered and worried. "You wish to speak for the humans?" she asked. "I wish to speak for the truth," Kethvar replied. "And the truth is that if you declare war on humanity, you will learn things about war that you never wanted to know." The general's 4 hands moved to his belt, where he carried the medals of 17 victories, 17 wars where he had led the Council's forces to triumph. 17 times he had been the sword that cut down the enemies of galactic peace. "Give me 1 hour," he said. "Let me tell you about the humans before you decide to fight them. Because once you hear what I have to say, you will understand why I, a warrior who has never lost a battle, am begging you not to start this war." The vote was postponed. General Kethvar would speak, and the galaxy would never be the same. General Kethvar walked to the center of the speaking platform. His forearms moved with the practiced ease of a career soldier, and his scaled skin caught the light from the 3 suns outside. Around him, 500 species waited in tense silence. "3 years ago," he began, his deep voice carrying clearly through the hall, "my fleet was patrolling the edge of Zephyrian space. We had received reports of strange energy readings from a system that our charts marked as empty. Dead space, we called it. Nothing there but a few rocky planets around a dying star." He gestured and a hologram appeared above him. It showed a star system that looked completely ordinary. A small yellow star, several planets, nothing special. We decided to investigate. Protocol demanded it. But when we reached the system, we found something impossible. The hologram zoomed in on the 3rd planet from the star. It was blue and green and white, covered in swirling clouds. It looked almost peaceful from space. This planet registered as a class Toptethan Deathworld on our scanners, the most dangerous classification in our database. Planets like this one are supposed to be empty. Nothing lives on a class Twun. Nothing can live on a class Tuthin. The assembled beings nodded. They all knew the classification system. Class I worlds were paradise planets, perfect for any species. Class Tothin worlds were the opposite. They were places where even their most advanced technology failed, where the environment itself was hostile to all known forms of life. The planet had gravity 1.5 times our standard. Kethvar continued. The atmosphere was a mix of oxygen and nitrogen that would be toxic to most of us. The surface was covered in liquid water, which our scientists told us was impossible at that temperature and pressure. He paused, letting them absorb this information. But that was just the beginning. The planet was geologically active. The ground moved constantly. Massive storms raged across the surface, storms that would destroy our strongest buildings. The weather changed without warning. The temperature swung from freezing to burning across different parts of the planet every single day. The delicate ones began to tremble. Their homeworld was kept at exactly the right temperature, with exactly the right humidity with no changes ever. Radiation from the star bombarded the surface. The planet had no proper magnetic field to protect anything living there. Solar flares should have sterilized the surface regularly, and yet, the hologram zoomed in closer, showing the surface of the planet. And there, clear as starlight, were cities. Massive cities with buildings that reached into the sky, roads and bridges that spanned continents, lights that twinkled like stars across the dark side of the world. There were signs of advanced civilization everywhere, not ruins, not archaeological remains. Active, living, thriving cities on a world that should have been a lifeless rock. Hierarch Zexton made a sound of disbelief. Impossible. No species builds cities on Deathworlds. That is what I thought, Kethvar said. So I decided to investigate further. We sent probes to scan the planet more closely. The hologram changed, showing detailed scans of the surface. The cities were even more impressive up close. They were built to withstand the constant earthquakes, the violent storms, the temperature changes. They were engineering marvels that most galactic species could never have imagined. But the probes detected something even more impossible. Life signs. Billions of them. Intelligent life signs. These creatures, whatever they were, had not just survived on this death world. They had built a thriving civilization. High Chief Morgak rumbled deep in his throat. What kind of beings live on a planet like that? That, Kethvar said, is exactly what I wanted to know. So I made a decision that probably violated a dozen regulations. I opened a communication channel. The hall erupted in shocked sounds. Species that never agreed on anything all made noises of surprise and fear. You made contact with unknown beings? Velthar demanded, her energy form flickering rapidly between colors. Without authorization? Without backup? Without following any safety protocols? I did, Kethvar admitted. And it was the most educational experience of my military career. He gestured again, and the hologram changed to show the bridge of his flagship. Kethvar stood at the center, surrounded by his crew. On the main screen was something that made several species in the hall gasp. It was a creature unlike anything in the galactic database. It stood upright on only 2 legs, with 2 arms and 1 head. Its skin was pale and soft-looking, with no natural armor or protective scales. It had small teeth, no claws, no natural weapons at all. It looked fragile and weak. This, Kethvar said, was my first look at a human being. The creature on the screen was speaking, though the translation had not yet been established. It moved its hands while it talked, and its face changed expression constantly. It looked almost cheerful. At first, my science officer thought it was a child of whatever species lived on the planet. It looked too small, too weak, too defenseless to be an adult warrior or leader. But then we managed to establish translation. The image changed to show the moment when the translation protocols locked in. Suddenly, the creature's words could be understood. "Greetings," the human was saying. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Starfleet. Welcome to our solar system. We've been monitoring your approach and are excited to make first contact with a new species." "Excited," Kethvar repeated, letting the word hang in the air. They were excited. A military vessel from an unknown species had entered their space without permission, and they were excited. The harmony singers made confused musical sounds. The crystal mines chimed in bewilderment. Excitement was not the normal response to potential invasion. Captain Chen invited us to come closer. She wanted to arrange a meeting between our species. She talked about friendship and trade and cultural exchange. She acted as if meeting alien beings was the most wonderful thing that had ever happened to her. Kethvar's amber eyes grew distant as he remembered. I asked her about her planet. I told her our scanner showed it as a class-twiddling death world. I asked how her people could possibly survive there. He paused, and his expression became something between amazement and horror. She laughed. He said simply. She laughed and said that Earth was actually a pretty nice place to live. She said they had done a lot of work to make it more comfortable over the years, but it was still a beautiful world. The hall had gone completely silent. Even the always-moving Etherians had stopped flickering. I thought there had been a translation error, Kethvar continued, so I asked again. I explained about the gravity, the toxic atmosphere, the radiation, the geological instability. I told her that our scientists said her planet should be uninhabitable. The hologram showed Captain Chen's face as she listened to this explanation. Her expression was one of polite confusion. She said, and I quote exactly, "Oh, you must be from a high-gravity world. Yes, Earth is a bit light for some species, and the oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere does take some getting used to if you're not adapted for it. But don't worry, we have excellent environmental suits if you'd like to visit." Kethvar looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of as many beings as he could. A bit light, he repeated. She called a world with crushing gravity a bit light. She called a toxic atmosphere something to get used to. She invited me to visit a planet that could kill me in minutes. He gestured once more, and the hologram showed the human woman smiling. And then, Kethvar said, she told me something that changed everything I thought I knew about warfare, about survival, and about what it means to be a warrior species. The general's 4 hands clenched into fists. She told me about their history. General Kethvar stood silent for a moment, remembering. Around him, the greatest minds in the galaxy waited to hear what could possibly be worse than learning that beings lived on Deathworlds. Captain Chen invited me aboard her ship for a proper meeting, he continued. Against all military protocol, I agreed. I brought a full security team and every protective device we had. The hologram changed to show the inside of a human starship. It was surprisingly clean and bright, with soft lighting and smooth surfaces. It looked almost comfortable. The moment I stepped aboard, I knew something was wrong. The air felt thick and heavy. The gravity was crushing. My environmental suit immediately began working harder to keep me alive, and yet the humans moved around normally, as if nothing was different. Kethvar gestured to show his past self in the heavy environmental suit, surrounded by his security team. They all looked tense and uncomfortable. Next to them, the humans looked relaxed and at ease. Captain Chen led us to a meeting room. She offered us refreshments, food and drink from their homeworld. When I politely declined, she seemed confused. The hologram showed the human captain holding out a cup of something that steamed in the alien atmosphere. She said it was just coffee and water, nothing special. But our scanners showed that the coffee contained chemicals that would be highly toxic to most galactic species. The water had mineral levels that would poison us. What they called refreshments would have been deadly. Several species in the hall made sounds of horror. The gentle giants, whose food was carefully prepared to be perfectly safe, began to rock back and forth in distress. But that was not the worst part, Kethvar said. The worst part was that they had no idea these things were dangerous. To them, coffee and water were the most harmless things they could offer. They were trying to be polite. He paused, letting that sink in. I asked Captain Chen to tell me about her homeworld, about how her people had survived in such a hostile place, and she began to tell me stories that I still have trouble believing. The hologram changed to show images of Earth. Not the peaceful blue and green planet seen from space, but the surface as it really was, massive storms that could be seen from orbit, earthquakes that split the ground open, volcanoes that shot fire into the sky. She told me about hurricanes, storms so powerful they could destroy entire cities. She said her people had learned to track them and prepare for them. They built stronger buildings and moved inland when the storms came. She spoke about this as if it was normal. The delicate ones made high-pitched sounds of fear. Their homeworld never had storms. The weather was controlled and perfect every day. She told me about earthquakes, the ground itself shaking so hard that buildings fell down. She said some parts of Earth had earthquakes every day. Her people learned to build flexible structures that could move with the shaking. They planned for disasters that would destroy everything. High Chief Morgak's stone-like features showed confusion. Why did they not leave? Why did they not find a safer world? I asked her the same question, Kethvar said. And her answer was the first hint of what we were really dealing with. The hologram showed Captain Chen's face as she considered the question. She said, "Leave, but Earth is our home. Yes, it can be dangerous, but it's also beautiful. The storms are terrible, but they bring the rain that makes our crops grow. The earthquakes are scary, but they also create mountains and valleys. The volcanoes are deadly, but they make the soil rich for farming." Kethvar's voice grew quieter, more intense. She talked about disasters that would wipe out entire civilizations, and she called them part of the natural beauty of her world. The hologram changed again, showing more images from Earth, cities built to withstand earthquakes, buildings designed to survive hurricanes, farms growing in soil made fertile by volcanic ash. But then she told me about the ice ages. The crystal mines chimed in confusion. They had never heard this term before. Every few thousand years, Kethvar explained, the entire planet gets cold, so cold that water turns solid across huge areas. These glaciers cover continents. Most of the planet becomes uninhabitable. Food becomes impossible to grow. Most species would go extinct. The harmony singers stopped their music entirely. The concept was too horrible to sing about. Captain Chen told me that her people had survived multiple ice ages, not by leaving the planet but by adapting. They learned to hunt animals in the frozen wastelands. They learned to make fire and build shelters and work together to survive when their entire world turned against them. Kethvar's forearms spread wide. They survived their planet trying to kill them, not once but dozens of times throughout their history. The hologram showed ancient humans, primitive and barely recognizable, but clearly the same species. They were building fires in caves, hunting massive beasts, working together against impossible odds. And then, Kethvar said, she told me about their wars. The hall grew even quieter if that was possible. Everyone knew about wars, but wars on Deathworlds were beyond imagination. Captain Chen explained that humans did not just fight the planet. They also fought each other. For thousands of years, different groups of humans battled for resources, for territory, for ideas. The hologram showed battlefields from human history, primitive weapons, then more advanced ones, then technologies that made galactic warfare look simple. They developed weapons that could destroy entire cities. They created diseases that could kill millions. They built machines of war that could cross their hostile planet and attack enemies on the other side of the world. Hierarch Zexton made a sound of sick disbelief. They fought wars while their planet was trying to kill them. Worse, Kethvar said. They fought wars using their planet as a weapon. The hologram showed human soldiers fighting in conditions that would kill most galactic species instantly. Battles in frozen wastelands, in burning deserts, in poisonous swamps. They learned to fight in every environment their Deathworld could create. They became soldiers who could survive in places where survival itself was impossible. Kethvar's amber eyes swept across the hall. And then, Captain Chen told me the most frightening thing of all. She said that the wars had made them stronger. That fighting each other for so long had taught them how to work together. That surviving both their planet and their own violence had prepared them for anything the galaxy could offer. The general's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. She said they were grateful for their hard history, because it had made them ready to explore the stars and meet new friends. He paused, letting the full horror of this sink in. Friends, he repeated. After surviving millions of years on a Deathworld, after fighting wars that would have destroyed any other species, they want to make friends. The hologram showed Captain Chen smiling again, that same cheerful expression she had worn when greeting alien visitors to her system. And that, Kethvar said, was when I began to understand what kind of beings we were really dealing with. General Kethvar moved closer to the center of the platform. His forearms gestured to the hologram, which now showed technical readouts from human ships and weapons. After talking with Captain Chen, I requested a tour of their technology. He said, "What I found changed everything I thought I knew about warfare." The hologram displayed the interior of a human warship. It looked deceptively simple, but the scanners revealed construction methods that defied galactic engineering principles. Their ships are not built for comfort, Kethvar explained. They are built for survival. Every system has 3 backups. Every critical component can be replaced during combat. The hull is designed to take damage that would destroy our finest vessels and keep functioning. The Peaceful Alliance members shifted uncomfortably. Their ships were works of art, beautiful and efficient, but built for a galaxy where wars were rare and controlled. Captain Chen showed me their weapon systems. At first I thought there had been a mistake. Their primary weapons were simple projectile throwers. Metal slugs fired at high speed, primitive compared to our energy weapons. High Chief Morgak rumbled. Projectile weapons are obsolete. Our energy shields stop them easily. That is what I thought, Kethvar said, until Captain Chen demonstrated. The hologram showed a human weapon firing. The projectile moved faster than most galactic sensors could track. When it hit the target, the results were devastating. The metal slug was moving at significant fraction of light speed. It carried more kinetic energy than our most powerful plasma cannons, and it was completely unaffected by energy shields because it was not energy. It was matter moving very, very fast. The crystal mines chimed in confusion. Their defensive systems were all designed around energy-based attacks. But that was just their basic weapon, Kethvar continued. Captain Chen explained that humans had spent thousands of years learning to kill each other efficiently. They had developed weapons for every possible situation. The hologram cycled through images of human military technology, weapons designed to work in space, underwater, in toxic atmospheres and extreme temperatures. They showed me nuclear weapons, devices that split atoms to create explosions powerful enough to destroy entire cities. They had thousands of these weapons. They called them tactical nukes and spoke about using them like we might discuss using a standard plasma charge. Several species in the hall made sounds of horror. Nuclear weapons were banned by every galactic treaty. They were considered too dangerous for civilized warfare. I asked why they had developed such terrible weapons. Captain Chen explained that during their wars some conflicts became so destructive that both sides would be completely destroyed. They called this mutually assured destruction, and said it had helped prevent their worst wars. Kethvar paused, letting this concept settle in. They had learned to use the threat of total annihilation as a tool for peace. Hierarch Zexton made a sound of sick fascination. They threatened to destroy themselves to avoid destroying themselves? Yes, Kethvar said simply, and it worked. But the weapons remained, along with the knowledge of how to build them. The hologram changed to show human military doctrine, battle plans that assumed massive casualties, strategies built around fighting enemies with superior technology, tactics designed for situations where retreat was impossible. I studied their military philosophy, Kethvar continued. It was unlike anything in our databases. Most galactic species fight wars to achieve specific goals with minimal losses. Humans fight wars to win regardless of cost. The general's voice grew harder. They have concepts that do not translate well. Acceptable losses means they will continue fighting, even when most of their forces are destroyed. Pyrrhic victory means they will accept winning a battle even if it costs them more than losing would have. The gentle giants began making low, mournful sounds. Their culture could not comprehend willingly accepting massive casualties. But the most frightening concept was something they called total war. This means using every resource, every person, every piece of technology to defeat an enemy. They would turn their entire civilization into a weapon if necessary. The hologram showed images from human history, entire populations working to build weapons, factories converted to produce military equipment, children learning to fight alongside adults. Captain Chen told me about something called the Home Guard. In their worst wars, even their civilians would fight to defend their territory. Old people, young people, anyone who could hold a weapon. They would never surrender as long as a single human remained alive. Kethvar's amber eyes grew distant, and then she told me about their most recent innovation, something that made all their previous weapons seem harmless. The hologram changed to show human space forces, ships that looked different from the ones they had seen before, bigger, more heavily armed, built for extended operations far from home. They had weaponized their own Deathworld experience. The hall fell completely silent. Human warships can operate in gas giant atmospheres. Their crews wear environmental suits as standard equipment, so hull breaches do not stop them. They can function in the radiation fields around stars, in the gravity wells of black holes, in the temperature extremes at the edge of solar systems. The hologram showed human ships doing impossible things, flying through asteroid fields that would shred normal vessels, operating in the coronas of stars where the radiation would kill most galactic species instantly. More than that, Kethvar continued, they had learned to use hostile environments as weapons. They could hide their fleets in radiation storms that would blind our sensors. They could use gravity wells to accelerate their projectiles to even more devastating speeds. They could fight battles in conditions where most of our ships could not even survive. The general's four hands clenched into fists. But the worst part was not their technology, it was their attitude. The hologram returned to Captain Chen's face. She still looked friendly and cheerful. I asked her about the ethics of their warfare, about the terrible weapons, the massive casualties, the willingness to turn entire worlds into battlefields. And she looked confused. Kethvar's voice dropped to a whisper. She said that war was just problem-solving with different tools, that humans had always faced challenges that seemed impossible, and they had always found ways to overcome them. She said fighting other species would be no different from fighting the ice ages or the volcanoes or the hurricanes. The hologram showed human colonies on impossible worlds, cities built inside volcanoes, farms growing in Arctic wastelands, people living and working in environments that would kill most galactic species. Captain Chen said something that will haunt me for the rest of my life. She said, "General, Earth spent 4 billion years trying to kill us. Earthquakes, ice ages, volcanoes, diseases, predators, starvation, disasters beyond counting. It failed. What makes you think any other enemy would have better luck? Kethvar looked around the hall, meeting as many eyes as he could, and then she smiled and asked if I would like to see their latest colony ships. She wanted to show me the vessels they were using to settle worlds that most of us consider uninhabitable. The general's voice grew grim. She spoke about colonizing the surfaces of neutron stars. She talked about building cities in the event horizons of black holes. She discussed plans for settlements that would make her homeworld look like a vacation resort. The hologram showed impossible human engineering projects, theoretical constructions that defied every law of physics and common sense. I realized then that humans were not just another species. They were something entirely new. They were survivors turned into an art form. They were evolution's answer to the question, what happens when a species faces nothing but challenges for millions of years? Kethvar's forearms spread wide. The answer is simple. They become unstoppable. General Kethvar stood in the center of the Great Hall, surrounded by the silence of 500 species. The weight of his words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Before I left the human ship, he said, Captain Chen gave me a gift. The hologram changed to show a small device, no bigger than Kethvar's palm. It looked simple and unremarkable. She called it a data pad. She said it contained information about human history and culture that might help our species understand each other better. Kethvar activated the device, and the hologram filled with images from human history. But these were not the wars and disasters he had shown before. These were moments of beauty, creativity, love. I spent weeks studying this device, he said, and I learned something that terrified me more than all their weapons combined. The images showed humans creating art, music, literature. They showed acts of kindness and sacrifice. They showed a species that could create beauty even in the midst of horror. Humans are not monsters, Kethvar said quietly. They are not killing machines or Deathworld demons. They are people. They love their families. They create beautiful things. They help each other in times of trouble. The hologram showed human parents caring for their children, artists creating masterpieces, scientists working to cure diseases and solve problems. But they are people who have been shaped by 4 billion years of surviving the impossible. The general's voice grew stronger. I began to understand why humans settle on Deathworlds. It is not because they want to destroy or conquer. It is because they literally cannot recognize a world as dangerous unless it is actively trying to kill them every single day. The images changed to show human colonies again, but now Kethvar pointed out details that revealed a different truth. Look closely at their settlements, he said. They are not military bases or mining operations. They are homes, schools, parks, places where families live and children play. The hologram zoomed in on a human colony built on a world racked by constant earthquakes. Children were playing in a park while their parents watched. The ground shook regularly, but the humans had simply built their playground equipment to move with the tremors. They bring their children to worlds that would kill us in minutes, Kethvar said. Not because they are cruel, but because to them, these are safe places to raise a family. Several species in the hall made sounds of disbelief and wonder. I realized that everything we consider threatening about human expansion is actually them trying to find places where they feel comfortable. The paradise worlds we fight over are too boring for them, too safe, too easy. Hierarch Zexton spoke up, his voice shaking. You are saying they colonize Deathworlds because they prefer them? I am saying they colonize Deathworlds because they are the only worlds that feel like home, Kethvar replied. Captain Chen told me that many humans find our safe worlds disturbing. The lack of natural disasters makes them nervous. They worry about what might be wrong with a planet that does not have earthquakes or storms. The general gestured, and the hologram showed a conversation between himself and Captain Chen. Her face was visible, looking genuinely puzzled. I asked her why humans did not simply build their colonies on safer worlds and visit the Deathworlds for resources. Her response was telling. The hologram activated, showing Captain Chen speaking. She said, General, would you build your home in a place that felt wrong to you? These worlds you call safe feel dead to us. There's no challenge, no excitement, no reason to push ourselves to be better. We like places that keep us sharp. Kethvar paused. Humans do not just survive challenges. They need challenges to feel truly alive. The hologram changed to show the final part of Kethvar's conversation with the human captain. This time, he had asked the question that had been burning in his mind since their first meeting. I asked Captain Chen what would happen if the Galactic Council declared war on humanity. The human woman's face had grown serious for the first time in their conversation. She had thought carefully before answering. She said, "General, that would make me very sad. We have been looking forward to meeting other species and learning from them. We want to be friends and share what we have learned about surviving in difficult places." Kethvar's forearms crossed over his chest, but then I asked her what humans would do if friendship was not possible, if other species insisted on treating them as enemies. Captain Chen's image flickered as the hologram replayed her response. She said, "We would do what we have always done, General. We would adapt. We would overcome. We would survive. And we would become stronger." The general's voice grew quiet again. I asked her to be more specific. I told her that the Galactic Council had millions of ships, billions of soldiers, weapons that could destroy entire solar systems. Captain Chen had smiled when she heard this. Not a happy smile, but the smile of someone who had heard similar threats before. She said, "General, do you know what humans call a fight against impossible odds?" Kethvar looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of as many beings as he could. She called it Tuesday. The silence that followed was deeper than anything the Great Hall had ever experienced. Captain Chen explained that humans had been fighting impossible odds for their entire existence, that they had developed strategies, technologies, and philosophies specifically designed for situations where they were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing certain death. The hologram showed human historical battles, small groups defeating much larger forces through superior tactics, determination, and sheer refusal to give up. She said that declaring war on humanity would teach them things about galactic military capabilities that they did not currently know. It would force them to adapt their technology to fight us specifically, and adaptation, she said, was what humans did better than any other species in the galaxy. Kethvar's amber eyes grew hard. But the most chilling thing she said came at the end of our conversation. I asked her if humans would ever surrender if faced with total destruction. The hologram showed Captain Chen's final words to the Zephyrian general. She said, "General, Earth tried to kill us for 4 billion years. It threw everything it had at us. Ice ages, volcanoes, earthquakes, diseases, predators, cosmic disasters, extinction events that wiped out most other species on our planet. We survived all of it. We survived it, and we learned from it, and we became stronger because of it." Captain Chen's image looked directly at Kethvar. "What makes you think the rest of the galaxy would have better luck?" Kethvar let those words hang in the air for a long moment. "Fellow beings of the Galactic Council," he said finally, "I have fought in 17 wars. I have led our forces to victory against every enemy we have ever faced. I am considered one of the finest military minds in galactic history." He paused. "And I am telling you that declaring war on humanity would be the greatest mistake our civilization has ever made. Not because we cannot defeat them, but because defeating them would teach them how to defeat us." The general's 4 hands spread wide. "The vote is yours to make, but before you decide, ask yourselves this question. Do you really want to turn a species that treats surviving on Deathworlds as a hobby into an enemy that knows everything about your military capabilities?" Speaker Velthar's energy form had gone completely silver, flickering between barely visible and blindingly bright. "General Kethvar," she said, her voice uncertain for the first time in thousands of years, "in your professional military opinion, what would happen if we declared war on humanity?" Kethvar looked up at her, his amber eyes reflecting the light of 3 distant suns. "The same thing that happens to everything else that tries to kill humans, Speaker. They would adapt. They would overcome. They would survive." He paused. "And then they would ask us if we had anything more challenging for them to try." The vote was called again. This time the result was unanimous. The Galactic Council voted for peace. Some enemies, they realized, were too dangerous to make. Even if you could win,